let's just say for the sake of argument that Lisa Cook had done absolutely nothing wrong. Isn't it a little preposterous to say that the President of the United States, the elected President of the United States, working, of course, in concert with Congress, doesn't have the ability to make these determinations? Who makes the decisions about this country? Is it those the American people elect, or is it unelected bureaucrats? And I feel very strongly that the President of the United States is much better able to make these determinations.
A lot of things up in that. One, working, of course, in concert with Congress, which Donald Trump is not doing when it comes to Lisa Cook. But I also want to show our viewers the major countries without an independent central bank, which it seems that the president wants us to follow: China, Iran, Cuba, Turkey, Venezuela, and Argentina. When you think about how earth-shattering it would be for someone like Lisa Cook, for any of these governors on the Fed to be taken out by the president off of their jobs, the effect of that country, what does it say about not just the economy, because that's what we focus on, but the rule of law and how much power the presidency has?
The vice president, who's a Yale-educated lawyer, really needs a basic education in constitutional law and how the Constitution works. Because when he says the president has this power, he's absolutely wrong. This is a congressional power. Congress has passed laws that very clearly maintain the board as something that's independent. Commissioners, governors are put in place for 15-year terms, and that's deliberately meant to avoid the whims of the political cycle. So look, even though the president can remove a governor, he has to do it for cause. And although that's been poorly defined, because this has never happened, not a single time in the history of our country, cause certainly at a minimum would mean some sort of nonfeasance or malfeasance, something that impacts the governor's performance in the position that they hold. And these allegations, and it's important to say that what's been leveled at Cook are simply allegations. They haven't been proven. Charges haven't even been brought. But they predate her service on the board. You know, I know a lot of people have filled out mortgage applications and indicated that the mortgage is for their primary residence, because what your primary residence is can shift over time. I'll leave that sort of a defense in Norm's very capable hands. But this sort of speculative approach to removing someone from a board that is meant to be independent, to preserve not just, you know, the nation, but yours and mine in a very individual way, our financial security, this is wrong-headed, and Vance knows better than to defend it in this way.
And I want to stay on that J.D. Vance interview with USA Today. He also commented on the National Guard deployment, sort of mocking Democrats and their reaction to what's going on. He said that we don't want to go in where we're unwelcome, that there's a political reason. He went on to say, to again mock Democrats who are saying this is a dictatorship, Trump is a fascist, blah, 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 blah. We don't want people to stand up before a press conference, accuse the president of being a fascist, accuse the National Guard of being some part of dictatorial coup when they're in private. They're actually thanking law enforcement. Norm, can you explain in very simple terms, without using these trigger words, apparently, authoritarianism, fascism, dictatorships,
and blah, 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 blah,
why Americans need to be concerned about what's going on?
Jackie, we know from looking at other countries around the world that when the military, this goes all the way back to the Roman Republic and the Rubicon, that the military had to stay out of Rome, because when the power of our military, not our law enforcement, not our police, their job is domestic law enforcement, but when the power of the military can be turned on average folks, that is a danger. That is when you slip over from democracy to dictatorship. And as we look out the windows of the studio, the National Guard is needlessly deployed around Washington, D.C. In California, what ICE was doing, the paramilitary activities were enjoined. A TRO was entered by a court, illegal. And so the American people don't like it. I saw a poll on, they don't want troops in Washington, D.C. by an overwhelming majority because of the danger to our democracy. So everybody watching should know those same troops that Donald Trump is controlling belong protecting us abroad, not here in our cities. That is a hallmark. He's saying it in his own words. He wants to be a dictator. He said even before he came to office, I want to be a dictator on day one. We heard the sound over and over again, dictator, dictator, dictator. This is one of the hallmarks. It should not be allowed. Fortunately, the courts are pushing back.
Miles, bringing you in here because there was another headline this week that is, frankly, pretty stunning. So tensions are rising between Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and the CIA chief because she disclosed an undercover officer's name, according to NBC. And Gabbard and her office failed to properly coordinate the move with the CIA before revoking the security clearances of the 37 current and former officials. It appeared that Gabbard and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence were unaware of the CIA employees' covert mission.
They're that good.
How big of a deal is this? I mean, what's your response to this?
Well, this is a huge deal. And I can tell you, there are people on that list that Norm knows and that I know and that I suspect Joyce knows that are extraordinary American patriots. I mean, top intelligence officials who've done things to save American lives, and not just hyperbolically or symbolically, actually. Americans who would have otherwise been dead were it not for the 37 people on those lists. So that list is arbitrary. That list is punitive. And that list apparently included people who were still undercover. This is a very big deal because once an intelligence officer's cover is blown, that's it. They don't go back in. They don't get to go back and deploy overseas. But it's more significant than that because that can compromise ongoing intelligence operations and activities. Why? Because that person possibly was engaging in those intelligence collection activities under their pseudonym, under their fake name. And once it's known that that person is actually an intelligence operative, that can lead foreign governments to go unravel real-time operations. That puts sources in danger. Again, that puts American lives in danger. This is like a core thing that the Director of National Intelligence shouldn't screw up. And clearly she screwed up. Now, I get that the CIA is saying, you know, we are upset about this. But look, I'm not going to let John Ratcliffe and the CIA off either, because they have been perfectly willing to come out and politicize intelligence in recent weeks on things like Russia and rewrite the past and carry the president's water in ways that also do damage to intelligence collection, and the United States intelligence community workforce. And so I think what we're seeing with both of those individuals in the IC is what we expected would happen if you put partisan henchmen into those jobs, is you start to put the American people in danger, and eventually the Oval Office becomes an echo chamber because they are only telling Donald Trump what he wants to hear. So it very much alarms me that they're hollowing out the spy service, but also that they're turning it into a partisan lever for the president.